Well, First Nations who oppose the pipeline expansion are making it clear they have not given up the fight. Stewart Phillip is the Grand Chief of the Union of BC Indian Chiefs. He joins me now from Vancouver. Grand Chief Phillip, first of all, thanks for your time today. I appreciate you taking, I know it's a busy day for you to spend some time talking to me. The Prime Minister's insisted there have been extensive consultations with Indigenous groups and that he believes the government has done its duty to consult with opponents and supporters of the project. Why do you believe that's not true?
Well, it's not true because we all participated to whatever extent was possible in the first round of consultations and found that to be very lacking. And as a consequence, the federal court quashed the initial approval of this project. The second round of consultations, unfortunately, were far worse and more flawed than the original consultation process. The time frames were incredibly abbreviated. There just simply wasn't enough time to properly organize and engage in the consultation process. Many issues were left outstanding. So without question, this will be a legal matter, and the validity of this so-called consultation process will be challenged legally.
No question. Tell me more about this second round of consultations that you say were inadequate and were lacking. The Prime Minister seems to suggest that they were extensive. They met the test of a duty to consult. What was flawed about them? Was it your sense that going into it, the federal government had a position already and they were just going through the motions, or did you think they really wanted to hear concerns about this project?
I think as a consequence of the enormous pressure placed on the government of Canada from Alberta and from the oil and gas industry itself, they felt the necessity to reduce the time frames in regard to the so-called consultation process. As I recall, initially it was announced and we had something like 3 to 5 days to register, and that just was impossible. We didn't have time to engage our constituents and receive the mandate to engage. And, you know, that characterized the consultation process throughout, and it just simply wasn't credible.
Let me ask you this. Is there anything the federal government could have said or done, or could say or do now, that would win your approval for this pipeline expansion?
No, absolutely not. The government of Canada, the Trudeau government, completely bungled this file. They had an opportunity at the beginning and the aftermath of the 2015 election, whereby the Prime Minister made a very significant and sincere promise to redo the environmental processes for this country, the n.e.b process, the National Energy Board. And he was questioned on camera whether it included the Trans Mountain Expansion Project, and he said absolutely yes. And we know he reneged on that promise. All he did was tack on an additional 4 months to an already flawed process, and we've been going downhill ever since.
But to be clear, you're saying to me that it wouldn't matter how much consultation they went through. If they weren't prepared to kill the project, you would not be satisfied, period, full stop.
What I'm saying is this country still lacks a credible environmental evaluation and review process for these types of projects. We were promised that in the aftermath of the last federal election. It did not come to pass, and as a result we have another flawed consultation process. That's unfortunate. We had an opportunity, a historic opportunity, to change the paradigm of this issue, and the Prime Minister blew it. So here we are, ensnared in this never-ending story of the the Trans Mountain Expansion Project.
The Prime Minister makes the case that Canada needs this pipeline to generate money to then take more measures to fight climate change and develop green technology and improve the environment for all Canadians. What do you think of that argument?
That's a very tired argument. The truth of the matter is it's not in the national interest. Certainly is in the interests of Alberta and the oil and gas interests therein. There's very little benefit for British Columbia in regard to this project. However, we're going to carry the burden of the risk in regard to a catastrophic pipeline rupture or a catastrophic tanker spill in Burrard Inlet, which is heavily congested waterway as it is, or the Saley Sea. So there's really nothing of economic consequence to British Columbia in regard to this project.
There are, though, 43 Indigenous groups who have signed agreements of support for Trans Mountain. 33 of them are in British Columbia. They don't agree with your point of view. What do you believe they're missing?
Well, I think that there are many analysts in the oil and gas industry that have said very, very clearly that this project was conceived when oil was $120 a barrel. We're down to about $50 a barrel. The market is incredibly volatile, and the economics of this project no longer make any sense. This project has become more of a political issue, and more recently, it's becoming an election issue. The decisions that were taken yesterday were more about the upcoming federal election than the economic viability of the Trans Mountain Expansion Project.
But are you saying that those Indigenous groups that support the pipeline did so when they thought it was a better economic option than it is today, and so it's no longer a good idea? That's what you're suggesting?
Absolutely. There's a reason Kinder Morgan walked away from this project. And as you may recall, the Government of Canada said they would have no problem finding a buyer, that there would be a line up to the door, so to speak. And there was absolutely no interest expressed in purchasing the pipeline from the federal government, and that still continues to be the reality today.
Although the government says it has had conversations and some discussions with Indigenous groups who may want to buy part or all of the pipeline. If that happens, will there still be the same resistance to the pipeline if it's owned by Indigenous investors?
Yes, absolutely, because it's not a question or an issue of who owns the pipeline. It's what goes through the pipeline in terms of bitumen, which is one of the most toxic subjects on the face of the planet. And this is about the high potential, the inherent risk of a catastrophic pipeline rupture or a tanker spill in Burrard Inlet or the Saley Sea.
Let's finish on this, Grand Chief. The Prime Minister is still insisting, as are his ministers, that this project will get built. What do you say to them?
Well, again, we've heard this song and dance from the Prime Minister, for several years now, and I think we're going to continue hearing this song and dance as he leaves the PMO's office after the next election.
All right, Stewart Phillip is the Grand Chief of the Union of BC Indian Chiefs, and he was speaking to us from Vancouver. Always a pleasure, Chief Phillip. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you.